pulled the stupid motor out. Yeah. So last night, found out that the motor mounts wouldn't fit, which I should have found out sooner. I mean, you go online and look at the spec on those motor mounts, and I could have found out right there because the width of it is wider than the frame rails are. So, cool. That brought into effect, what am I going to do, right? Because originally I was just going to get the 6-inch drop front axle and make changes there, but now it's like, well, how far do I want the motor sitting up? How far should I just raise these up instead? Okay, if I'm going to make changes, why not make some damn changes, right? I wanted to stance it, and I really thought that the 6-inch and moving this to the back would have changed it. But without knowing this location, I couldn't really figure out front to back on the engine, so that was a problem. So realistically, to get the correct engine location, I need to get the correct stance and the correct, location of these frame rails, which puts this situation right here into question. Because if I want this to sit up 6 inches higher so that this can sit up 6 inches lower, then the cheapest route would be moving this, right? But there's a couple options. For instance, this could be moved back to there, which would, make a 3-inch difference right there, right? So there's half of my drop, which means I'd only have to raise this a couple inches. Not too bad, right? Now, the nice thing is the back is actually a relatively easy solution. For starters, which I'm going to do next, is I'm going to cut this. I'm not sure why it wasn't cut before, but I'm going to give that some chop, right? But for dropping the back, it's pretty easy. You move this location back here, right? Back here. You move this location back here, and you move that location back here. Now, of course, that means this has to move back to line up, and that has to move back to line up, but that's still relatively easy. And the nice thing is the brackets that I want to buy for here are adjustable. So it gives me 3 to 5 inches of drop. So I should be able to figure it out, right? Because I can, if the lowest setting here doesn't fit, then okay, so I move this mounting point up, right? Yeah, sure, I lose a little bit of bed depth, but that's not the end of the world considering, the gas tank's probably going to sit above this anyways. Now, the reason I'm cutting this is because then I'm going to pop this guy loose. I'm going to set this rear axle at the height it needs to be, right? So then that's not a deciding factor of why I can't get this down on those guys. And then I'll come to the front. Hello, Rosie. And I will take off all of this, right? Because currently the center of this is actually an inch lower than the bottom of that frame rail, right? So technically the center sits lower than my main ride height, at least with no weight on the front. So that's not ideal, of course. But we'll change that. So getting back to what I was getting at, when I take this off, right, take out the axle, take off that guy, then I can set this frame rail all the way down to ride height, right, which is what I was supposed to be doing in the first damn place, and I didn't, right? So from there, then I will take this damn thing and figure out what height, I want that, which technically I could probably do anyways, is I could just measure 14 inches from the top down, because I'm pretty sure that's the highest I would ever go intake-wise. But maybe I need to actually find the intake I want and do that, right? There's no point in going over this because I already have, pretty small visibility, and then I want to put a visor on as well. And I want to be able to see, right? I bought bigger mirrors and took off the round mirrors so that I could see. And I'm going to put a reverse cam and all that. Like, I wasn't kidding when it's going to start out as a rat rod, but it's going to evolve into what I'm calling the red rod. It'll be hot rod-esque, but not quite. I doubt very much on it will be shiny, right? What you see in chrome or aluminum, I'm probably going to paint over. If it's chrome, I'll just replace it or take the chrome off and then paint it. I don't know. That's a problem for future me. Today me needs to cut and drop that axle, so at least that's not the problem. And then take this front axle off, so that's not the problem. And then figure out how the hell I'm actually going to drop the frame down, because that might be a problem. I hadn't got that far, all right? That's going to be a little tricky, but it's only tricky because it's currently on some massive jacks, right? I do got these little guys, which these two are probably going to go under the rear back here, so I could set that ride height. Sadly, with this taken off, I won't exactly be able to set this ride height yet. But there's nothing stopping me from when I cut this to coming back and propping this up where it needs to be to get the proper ride height. So yeah, we'll see how far I get in this video. I don't know how far I'm going to get tonight, only because, well, I got to go to bed early so I can get up at 2 in the morning and drive to Spokane to get on a flight to do my one-day trip in LA, because I'm going to go see the Ken Block exhibit while it's there because, well, Ken Block, right? He's inspiring me to build things, and you'll see that once I get to the C10 in the future. But enough rambling. I need to get off my ass and work. Let's do this. how long the video is going to be, but it's a lot of work. It's a few days. So I don't really remember where I left off or where we were at. I'll see it in video editing, and hopefully it makes sense. So working on getting the stance dropped. Took me a bit to decide on the ride height, which sure, right height. My original goal was 4 inches, and I was like, well, if I do 7, it'll match the Audi. It'll be a decent amount of ride height. But then I was like, okay, well, I'll 3D print some braces to hold the center sections, and then it's like, well, that's 2 days of printing, and I don't want to do that. And that's 2 days if I didn't skip a beat, right? And there'd be hours missed, so it'd take more than that. And I was like, well, to get 6 inches, I could do 4 2x4s. Okay, so we'll do 6 inches. And I was like, well, I don't really want that many 2x4s stacked up, so no, I'm not going to do that. And then I was like, well, you know what I could do? 4x6s. So I got 2 4x6s, which will set the ride height at what, 5 5/8, roughly. That'll be somewhere around there. A little over 5.5, but it should be 5 5/8. But you know, should be. I measured it just to verify that they're not too wonky, and they are a hair difference, but not enough to matter for what I'm doing. Now to get this, so then from there, trying to catch you guys up on what I did. I went through and measured everything the other day. That I didn't record because it was literally just me with the tape measure and some calipers and angle finder. And it was just trying to get everything I could to get the frame into SolidWorks so I can start making the manipulations I need to in SolidWorks. Now the goal is not to mess with the center section. Now with that being said, I'll have to move the transmission mount later. That won't be done until I figure out the motor mounts. Now the motor mounts are for sure going to change because of moving where the motor sits. I'm really contemplating doing something a little different motor-wise, so we'll see how that goes. But that's for later date because those aren't concrete details. What is concrete? 5.6 ride height. Okay. Now in SolidWorks, which is of course perfect world, so it's not going to be matching what I am. That gives me 0.3 inches when I set this down without modifying it, right? So then it was like, cool, do I just channel this? Or do I replace this and lift the whole thing? I thought channel. My buddy wants me to lift the whole thing, and maybe he's right. So that's currently my plan there, is just replace this with something that goes taller to give me the 4 inches I want from this to the frame rail at ride height, which gives me more than enough movement because, well, I'm not going to be jumping this thing. And it's also not going to be overly comfortable. You know, it's going to be a little bit rigid of a ride. Now with the bed, I do have some distance between here. So if I lift this, it should not affect this, right? But there is a chance I might have to cut it shorter and move it, which, whatever. If I do that, I do that. I'm not too concerned about it. I'm also hoping that these mounts stay the same when I move it. So the other thing that changes, one, you just seen me cut off the pan hard bar brackets, right? Because those aren't going to work for as low as I'm going. There'd be way too many collisions. Now, of course, you can use the kind that angles, which I thought about, or I can use the pan hard bar I have and move the bracket so that it sits behind the axle, which means, of course, I've got to do the same with the shock towers for the coilover. So these will be replaced with a bracket that allows me some adjustment and some ride height back here. So I say all of that in the hopes that when I make this change, this is in the correct position so I don't have to cut them off and move them. I will have to cut these off either way. I'll have to clean off where the pan hard bar was and sadly I'll have to replace this one either way. Now I could have pulled the whole axle out of the damn way and not had to cut anything and just lowered it, but wow. But I didn't do that. Maybe I should have. I didn't. It's a problem for future me. I don't know if I'm going to cut out the crow noises or if you'll hear them through the mic, but they got dramatic out of nowhere. So maybe they don't like my idea. Now my next step, which I'm still doing in this video, is to remove all of this. So I originally had, so this is a 4-inch drop axle with the mounts over the axle. Now I was going to try and do the ride height by doing a 6-inch drop axle and moving this behind the axle. That would have done damn near all of my drop. But that's on back order and for who knows how long. So that's where we got into this whole, do I make the changes? Do I just go with the taller ride height, modify it later? And it was like, and then the motor mounts didn't fit and the trans mount didn't fit. And I had to cut and make changes anyway. So I was like, screw it. I'm gonna go for it. Now, with that being said, yeah, it's a decent amount of changes, but it shouldn't put me that far out of what I'm doing. That should be faster than waiting on back-ordered parts. And I was real nervous trying to figure out where I want the motor when I don't know where this is going to land. So what I'm going to try to do is leave this all the same, but have it sit higher, right? So all my dad's stuff is still there, just sit higher. One thing I'm going to have to change is going to be this mounting location. But again, that's a problem for future me when I try and figure out how I need that to sit. Now, one thing I did find out during all of this is I do have about a 3/4 twist up front. That I don't like. So that I'm going to try and modify too. Now, I've got two different design ideas. One is I just continue this up, cut this a little bit shorter there, and have that same angle. Two, which I like more, we'll see how much I like them when I get them in the SolidWorks, is I actually change that angle and I sweep it and then go forward. Now what I like about that is it gives me more header room. Now another thing I'm doing during all of this is I'm raising the motor to sit higher. So from the valley cover, which of course you can't see because the motor's over here, to the cowl or whatever you want to call the top of the firewall here, should be 11 inches. So that gives me enough room that if I want to go with the high ram Holley intake, I can. None of that will be done in the first iteration. In fact, what I want to do costs a hell of a lot more than Holley, and yeah, that'll be way down the road. But needless to say, 11 inches there, and then I did move the engine forward. Currently in SolidWorks, I have a 2-inch gap. I don't know what I want to do, right? Because right now, I also want to try and, I don't know if I want to pull this back more. Because I have the opportunity to move these back further. But I don't know. That might be too much. So essentially, cut off, move up. Now the fun thing is to get this down to ride height, this needs to go away. Because I have 10.5 inches from this to the center of this. Right? So when I drop her down to 5 inches, all of this collides. That's how much she's got to go up. So I'm looking at probably 6 inches up higher than what this bar sits right now, which is a good amount of lift, right? But that allows me to not change out the parts. And really, if I do it right, I shouldn't have to adjust much of anything. I should be able to get my frame straightened back up, change those rear bolts, and be good to go. I've realized this is a lot of conversation for the middle of a damn video. So I'm just going to cut back to me taking the front off, and honestly, I probably won't talk to you again until she's sitting at ride height. So let's get back to work. And that is the new ride height, with one exception. The body will sit a little bit higher when I put body mount bushings in there, because yeah, I'm not riding metal on metal. I'm not sure if that was my dad's intention, but it's definitely not what I'm doing. I'm going to measure the difference though, so I can line the bottom of the cab up with the bottom of the frame on the inside, and that should give me a pretty good idea of how big of a bushing I can go. Like I said, I was real close on that back, not quite fitting for what I'm doing. Now I need to do some research to figure out what to do with this guy, because I'm pretty sure that's not acceptable. Could be wrong. I'm pretty sure that's not acceptable. So I'll do a little research, figure that out. Yeah, now to raise this 4 inches and raise this potentially 6 inches. Oh man, that's a lot. So the back will have a lot less travel than what my dad had planned, and I mean really it wasn't ever going to travel as much as it was set. I'm sure there was reasons for why it was up that high, but can't just ask him. So I'm just gonna go with it and act kind of like I'm doing this from scratch. But I gotta say, damn, she low. Makes me want to bring the bed in here too and really get an idea of how this thing's gonna look. But am I excited? Man, so excited, can't talk. So the next video, my goal is the next video will be cutting the frame and welding it. So be a lot of work, and I'm hoping I can knock that out in one video. I'm pretty nervous, right? So I'm going to put it all in CAD, but then it's not that easy, right? That'll give me a rough idea, and it should, at the very least, tell me my cuts. Cool, cuts are nice, but the other thing is I'm going to have to then make those welds and square everything up. With that, I'm going to have to lift the cab up off, which I'm pretty nervous about. My buddy made it seem like it would be, simple. I don't think it's going to be simple. As in, I'm by myself trying to figure this out. So maybe it will be simple, right? Maybe I just strap on the inside, lift her up and out. Maybe. Which reminds me, maybe I screwed myself over on being able to access those bolts. Nah, we're good. We're good. I can get to those bolts. Sweet. So have one last look at her. With that, I'm going to call it a video. Thanks for riding along.